couple of years ago, I was out having dinner with my wife and my 2 daughters. And it was all very nice, and we were on the main course. And my oldest daughter, Daisy, who at the time was about 18, said, "Dad, how much are you and Mum worth?" I looked at my wife looked at me. I looked at Daisy looked at me. My younger daughter, Megan, looked at Daisy looked at Megan. Silence. Why couldn't she ask me something about sex? Do I tell her how much we're worth? Does she think I'm bragging? Does she think I'm a loser? Is she going to tell her friends, or her friends going to tell Mum and Dad that everyone in the world's going to know where I live? Why did I have such a problem just answering the question? Why? Because it's pretty straightforward. Money is a taboo, isn't it? AXA Insurance, sorry about that, but AXA Insurance several years ago conducted a study where they found that 1 in 7 people would rather have a major dental procedure than deal with their money. And in fact, 26% of that same group said that the thought of dealing with their money absolutely terrified them. Not worried them or concerned them, terrified them. Now, University College London is a very, very reputable organisation, right? And in 2015, they got 15,000 people who are a cross-representative example of the UK population. And they found that the average person was 7 times more likely to be prepared to tell a complete stranger how many sexual partners they'd had and whether or not they'd ever contracted a sexually transmitted disease than tell them how much they earn. I kid you not. You can look this up. No, I love meeting strangers. I love talking to people I've never met before. And I'll be around afterwards if you want to buttonhole me. But if I don't get a chance to speak to you, my answers are 3 and no. You can participate, sorry. So here's the thing, it's scary, right? Money is pain. It's worrisome. It's overwhelming. It is the thing that people don't want to deal with because it's everywhere and it's nowhere. And when you understand that, once you accept that, and as an educator and as a communicator, that's where I come from. I accept that most people would rather do other things than deal with their money, although their money's important, right? So if we accept that, we have to find a different way of engaging. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you become more intentional about the role of money in your life and you use it in the way that's appropriate to your needs and that it doesn't control you. So, here's the thing. Because it's a taboo and it is pain, it can lead to us to have a very tricky relationship with money. Now, I have got a rhetorical question which you can keep to yourself, but just take this one away with you. With money, does it love you and leave you? Are you just friends? Are you going steady, or are you soulmates? Just an interesting one. I've just started recording a load of podcasts for a budgeting app, and it's called Real Money Stories, and I speak to real people, and I ask them that question. I've never had someone tell me they're soulmates with money. So we've got plenty of work to do. So, the problem we've got is money. People don't have money problems. Money has a people problem because of this. And essentially there are 3 elements that I firmly believe, and all the science shows us, that go together to make up your financial personality and how the relationship you have with money. And that's money beliefs, money emotions, and money habits. And I'm just going to unpack those and just touch on those today. It's a big subject, so I'm going to try and keep it as concise as I can. So where do money beliefs come from? Money beliefs primarily come from your childhood. They come from the messages that you learn from your parents, from your peers, from society as you were growing up. And they formulate how you relate to the world and the sense that you make of it when it comes to earning, spending, borrowing and investing. It's as simple as that. So the best way to illustrate this is to share with you my own money story, or one of them. Okay? Now, I was born in South East London and I grew up in the 70s and early 80s. In fact, that documentary about Thatcher, I watched it last night. It brought back all those horrible memories, how bad the UK was in the 70s. Everything was grey, wasn't it? Awful. This is where I grew up, in this little tiny 2 up, 2 down, right? See that? Not palatial, is it? My mum was a single parent. I had 2 older brothers, and we could not swing a cat in this house. And it was such a rough area that we didn't have street signs. They wrote it on the road. That's how rough it was. But money was always tight. And one day my mum said, Jason, I must have been about 7 or 8. And she said, I need to go and buy a hat for a wedding. So she said, let's go to Elton and go to the department store. That's when we used to have department stores. So we went into Elton, was all excited, and thought I might get a trip to the Wimpy out of it. You know, remember those? No, too young, all of you. So anyway, we went into the department store and we walked straight past the hat department. I said, Mum, I thought you needed a hat. She was in the kitchen department, looking at all these lovely stoves. 2 hours later, she announced that she had purchased a new cooker. But not just any cooker. Anyone here seen Downton Abbey? You know, great big stately home, been to a National Trust place? This cooker would not have looked out of place in a big stately home. Okay? There's a mismatch here. This thing had 2 great big ovens. It had a warmer, it had a griddle, it had 6 burners, it had 2 grills, had a sort of control centre that would not have looked out of place at NASA. And when the guys came to deliver it 2 weeks later, that's when I learned my swearing vocabulary. They had to get it down this little tiny hallway into a tiny kitchen, and it was so big it came out over the doorway as you went into the kitchen. Ridiculous. Why did my mum buy a great big cooker? And here's the thing. She didn't just buy it with her own money because she didn't have any. She bought it with this new thing called credit. And here's the thing. My mum didn't realise you actually had to pay the instalments on credit. So what happened was a debt collection company ended up taking over the debt, and a big guy who was as big as this door, bigger, used to come round on a Friday night to get the money, because that's the only way you could get it off my mum. But my mum had got an idea on this one. This is how she was going to thwart this when she had no money. Make out we're not in. I said, Mum, I think they're up to that one. They do this for a living. I was ahead of my time, you know. She said, just hide below the window and make out we're not in. Don't answer the door and he'll go away. Now, sadly, my mum, you know, she's still with us, but she's chaotic with her money. So growing up, what did that do to me? What did that do to me? Well, it made me really very anxious about money. And this is the bit when I do the therapy in front of friends. I think, you know, we know each other now. I think I can share this with you. Is that okay? I felt so anxious about money. One stage of me thought, oh, money's for spending, it's for fun. And another side of me worried that I'd never have enough. And as I grew up, I became like my mum. I became a train wreck. I mean, it's still embarrassing. I've done this talk 100, or versions of it, 120 times. And it's still painful every time I admit to you that in my late teens and early 20s, I put the O into overdraft. I had more credit cards than there were available. I just was out of control. I had a mortgage and I didn't think you had to pay it. I was only in there 6 months, and then they wrote and said, is there any chance of you paying this mortgage? It was a bit tight, you know. I was completely and utterly out of control. And essentially, the issue was because I was taking the script from my mother, and I decided what actually decided it for me was I met the lady who I didn't know was going to become my wife. So I thought I'd better grow up. And I realised that I had to really change my beliefs about money and work out the role it had in me. And it was not going to control me anymore, and I wasn't going to just drift off into oblivion. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just sharing with you this realisation that I was in control, that I was responsible, and that I could make changes to my life that suited me was the big revelation. Now, here's the thing. All the studies show that if your needs as a child for love, attention, security, and so on are not met, then you will have a higher need of what we call extrinsic motivation. This is the need for external validation of other people, okay? Or to be seen to be doing well. It's called keeping up with the Joneses. You know, when you see the people who've got a flash car, oh, I wonder how much that's costing them on finance. That's the first thing I think. I'm not judging people, but, you know, I like to. So, if you are very cool with yourself and you're comfortable in your own skin, you've got a very strong set of inner values about what's important, and you're really clear what's important, and the role of money in your life, you will have what we call more intrinsic motivation, which means that you don't need external validation. So we'll see in a minute that consumerist society is based on the fact of making you feel bad about yourself, and that the only way you can meet that need and be accepted and be worthy is to spend money on things you don't need. Okay? That's where it comes from. So here's the thing. Money is merely a tool. It's not, your net worth is not your self-worth. And if anyone here ever read any of my FT articles, God's sake. I thought you said they were a top gear, this lot. But I wrote one called about, I did talk about rejecting consumerism. Not to say you mustn't have nice things, but just that thinking. And it goes right back to your psyche. So here's the thing. If you've got beliefs which are not helping you from your childhood or from your early years, you need to reassess those, because you might be carrying around baggage and ideas that are outdated, okay? Or other people's ideas of what's good. As we'll see in a minute, just because they want that doesn't mean that's got anything to do with you. And if you're cool about yourself, then you'll be fine. So, I want to tell you about Doug. Now, Doug is a friend of mine from the gym. I know what you're thinking. I haven't been for a while. New year, we're going to sort it. But Doug is lovely. He's early 50s. He hasn't got an ounce of fat on him. He's got a six-pack. He's super fit. Makes me feel sick. But he's a lovely fella. And he's normally very, very friendly and very up. And one day I walked into the gym, and you know when you see someone's not right, someone's just not happy. I said, Doug, you know what you do when someone's not feeling good. What's happening? How's it going? He said, my wife's left me. Now, I didn't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing, because I'd never met Mrs. Doug, right? I said, I'm sure she'll come back. He said, I'm sure she won't. She's now living with a new fella. I said, look, I'm sure this is the beginning of the rest of your life. There's going to be things come out of this. You're going to look back and laugh. So I don't think I am. So anyway, the weeks went by and he was keeping me updated with what happened with the divorce. Eventually one day he said, right, that's it. We've agreed the financial settlement. I've got £64,000 for 24 years worth of marriage. I said, that doesn't sound a bad deal. He said, but I'm too old to get a mortgage. I haven't got enough money to buy a house. I've got nowhere to live. I'm finished. I said, Doug, you aren't thinking this through. Something's going to happen. Your life is going to turn around. A couple of weeks later, I walk in the gym, and you know when someone's got that big beaming smile. I said, Doug, I see you're happy. He said, I am. I said, I know what's happened. I said, you've got a new lady in your life, haven't you? He said, no, bought myself a new motor. He said, this car was £120,000 new with every extra that Audi provide. It's a demonstrator that's done small amount of mileage, and I got it for 64,000 quid. It was up for 70. I said, well, where'd you get 64 grand from? He said, that's all I had. They said, well, take it. What they didn't tell him was each of the tyres are £1,000. They do not lift the bonnet for less than £1,200. This is a liability on wheels. Why did Doug buy that car? And in fact, I made this point in one of my articles in the FT, and God knows how many of these oddbods put these comments above your articles. He bought it because it was part of his right to do it. You know, I thought, well, fine, all right. We've all got our own view. But he bought it, and before you say anything, this is not Doug. All right, just get that one clear. He was sad, wasn't he? He'd had his feelings hurt. He'd been rejected by his wife. He'd been told he was worthless. So his view was to go and treat himself because he was worth it, to make himself feel good. And, you know, he's had a succession of dates, as I call it. I don't know if they're dates. Is that Tinder dating thing? I think it's something else, isn't it? But anyway, the point is, he's had a succession of women because he's got this car. But why does he need the car to prove who he is? He's a lovely man anyway. And this is what happens if we are feeling down, whether it's from our childhood or from just our life that we're going through, or we've had a trauma, or life's not going well, we are susceptible to being played. We are being susceptible to being manipulated. Perhaps you guys are all inoculated against it. Perhaps you're all the superheroes. Nothing else out there ever gets through to you. But you can protect yourself if you've got stronger values and intrinsic motivation, but also if you understand this. Now, inside all of you, there are two people. Now, I do realise that for some of you this is not news. You know who you are. So, here you have the planner. The planner is rational, is far-sighted, looking for your best interests, thinks everything through, weighs it up, long-term versus the short-term. And then you have the doer. The doer is myopic, is primeval, wants it now, self-interested, buy it. It's that voice in the back of your head, now, get it, because you're worth it. So, the planner and the doer are in conflict all the time. And this is a psychological concept that doesn't just apply to money, but this is the actual, Richard Thaler was the one that termed these concepts of planner and doer when it comes to money. You can't win every battle, okay? But you can win the war. And the way that you win the war is you basically provide safe spaces for the doer to do its bit, but not insofar that it will sabotage your best interests. You with me? It's a bit like, you know, if you go, I've never gambled ever, not even a tenner. And I went to Las Vegas on a conference, never again. And I said, I'm not gambling. And someone said, just gamble £50 and then you can say you've done it. I said, no, it's against my principles. But other people did, and they said, I'm only going to do £50. So for instance, if you have a propensity for your doer to get out of control, that might be a way of exercising it so that you have ring fence the damage it can do. So you take it out, exercise it, and then bring it back, and your planner is in control. Make sense? Who knows who this is? Anyone? Yeah?
Kylie Jenner.
Thank you. I had high hopes you were going to come out with that. I was trusting you. Thank you. Actually, that is Kylie Jenner, but that is the youngest billionaire in the world. Did you know that? She's 21. She has 148 million Instagram followers. She has hair and beauty and fashion products, and she is the youngest billionaire in the world. Forbes have put her at £1 billion. What I see there is that person is not anyone's friend. That is a very smart businesswoman. And her idea is to manipulate people or encourage people to buy stuff they don't need with money they haven't got. Okay? You are not worthy unless you look, I mean, quite frankly, she's a lovely girl, but does she need all that makeup? Apparently so. And apparently you do as well. Now here's the point. It may not affect all of you in this room. You may not think, but here's the thing. That's a personification of what's going on now. When you think that people aren't sure about who they are, social media enables people to actually spend their money easier. So here's the thing. She is not your friend. She's not your children's friends, your grandchildren's friends, your friends' friends. She's just a businesswoman out to make money. Now, is there such thing as a sale? Who likes shopping here? Come on. I think we need to be honest. We all like shopping, right? My wife comes home and I said, she's got some bags, and she shows me a jacket. She goes, I said, that's lovely, that's nice. She goes, yeah, I've got it in the sale. It was reduced from £250 to £150. I look at her. I said, Jane, can I just, darling, been married 25 years, never a crossword ever. That was a joke. I said, the fact that they've marked it down from £250 to £150 does not mean you've saved £100. She said, it does. I said, it doesn't. The only two questions that you need to ask yourself, and this is for everyone, do I want this jacket for £150 now? And what can I not now do as a result of spending this money? That second question is deep. We don't go too deep in this talk, but that's a deep question. If you ask yourself, what can I not now do as a result of spending this money? You start thinking, I'm trying to buy a new car. Not a new car, obviously, because we let people who like to lose lots of money do that. But I'm trying to buy an E-Class estate Mercedes. And there was a guy, a year and a half old, 2-year-old, it was 23,000. I said, yeah, I'll give you 19 grand for it. I've been offered that by a trader. I said, okay, we're on the same page then. Well, I've got it up for 23 grand. I said, what's that got to do with me? I said, look, if you can get 23 grand for it, you must and should do that for you and your family. I agree. But that's got nothing to do with me. Something is only worth what someone's prepared to pay for it, not what someone is asking, whether it's a property, a car, a piece of art. So that's a really important thing. It's positioning. People are trying to anchor you to a higher price. It's got nothing to do with what you should pay. It's the opportunity cost for you. I've got another question for you. This is a little bit deep, right? Just give you some, I think we're friends now. We know each other. If you were the only person in the world and you could get over the loneliness, okay, and everything still worked, the shops were full, You still could get the car, you could buy stuff. Would you still have the same haircut? Would you still have beauty products? Would you still wear the same clothes? Would you still drive the same car? Would you still put stuff on Instagram or stuff on Facebook or whatever? So here's the point. Who are you doing the spending for? That's an interesting one, isn't it? Would you still do what you do? So, Will Smith, is he not one of the best American actors? That's a yes. Will Smith is a genius because his favourite quote is one of my favourite quotes. It's from a satirist called Will Rogers. And it's this quote: too many people are buying things they can't afford with money that they don't have to impress people that they don't like. And I would say, who don't bloody care? And if you can't trust a man in black, who can you trust? Now, Oscar Wilde, again, a fantastic character, obviously had a few faults, but I love this one. I can resist everything except temptation. Now, the thing about emotions is you're not always in control, as we know, because the doer comes out. So one of the things you can do is you can actually move forward and you can actually create a situation where you don't have to work too hard. And you do that by your environment and your experiences and who you hang out with. And as I said to someone the other day, I said, if you hang out with people who are heavy drinkers, there's a good chance you're going to be a heavy drinker. I know there's a few nods here. Yeah, okay. If you hang out with people who spend lots of money or trying to buy lots of things that look flashy, there's a good chance you can get sucked into that. I did some pro bono work some years ago and counselling some people, and one chap, he very high earner, so please don't think this is about people on modest earnings. He felt very, very depressed, and I was trying to get to the bottom of what the problem was, and he said, I felt the pressure that I had to have these things because that's what people in my position do. Right? Very lonely guy. Anyway, he managed to pull through. He's a nice fella. So here's the thing. We need to focus on something different. And I want to tell you about my friend Michelle. Has anyone ever heard of Michelle McGrath? Yeah. Good. You have? You read a book? No. Okay, good. Michelle is a lovely, lovely person. You know, when you meet someone, they're very genuine, very warm, really nice lady, very bright. And she tells the story that she bought a house with her husband, Frank, in North London. And she describes on her website, I live with my husband, Frank, and our house and our big mortgage in North London. And she never seemed to get ahead, despite them all earning quite good money. And she decided, she heard about this thing called Buy Nothing Day, which usefully is on the same day as Black Friday in November. And the good news is, you don't spend any money. It doesn't cost you anything. It's called Buy Nothing. So she did this for a day. Her and Frank spent no money for the day. Flush with the success of the no spending day, she said, Frank, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go on a spending detox for a year. Now, he's a very quiet guy, Frank, but he loves her. He looked at her very, very sort of not sure. He said, what does this mean, Michelle? She means, other than paying for the mortgage and all the basic bills, £35 a week for food, we spend nothing on anything else. Nothing. Now, he was not that convinced about this strategy, but he loves her, so he said, all right, we'll give it a go. So when they went out with friends, they sat there with a glass of tap water and wouldn't let anyone buy them a drink. They went on a cycling holiday on bikes they already had, camped in places they didn't have to pay to camp. They met interesting people. They did stewarding at pop concerts. They heard some great bands, cost them nothing. But the point is about this year is it really made them, as Seneca, the ancient Stoic, said, when you have nothing, you realise what matters. So by really detoxing down to the very bare minimum, she'd worked out what was important. But here's the other thing. They saved £26,000 over that year. And when she got to the end of the year, she had a party to celebrate. And after she got over the hangover from hell, because if you've not had an alcoholic drink for 12 months and then you have a couple of glasses of wine, you're out. Just a little throwaway. That's a little extra for you. No charge for that one. She decided to use $25,000 of it to reduce their mortgage. And the reason was because getting debt-free was what was important to them. Now, I'm not saying that you've got to go on a spending detox, so it's all right, you're okay. You're going to cancel the plans for the weekend, I know. But what I am saying is that you've got to think very carefully about what you're doing on a daily basis, because it's not all the big stuff. And this is the good news. This is about taking control of daily habits. So I want you to forget goals. Now, that is pretty controversial, right? It's all right. Debbie, don't worry. We're going with this. I'm not saying don't have goals, and I'm not saying don't articulate goals, but don't get hung up on them. Or if you're responsible for helping other people get better with money, don't let them get hung up on it. Very few people have goals. I have no goal to be retired. That's not something that is in my personal thing. Being financially independent, yeah, that's up there. Making work, who's interested in making work optional? You work because you want to, not because you have to. Yeah? Everyone? Why don't we have adverts like that? Making work optional. I'm in. Where do I start? Okay? Retirement's what you do when basically 4 years before you die, from what I can work out. And things don't work. As my wife said, keep them working. So, here's the thing. Forget goals. And the reason I say forget goals is goals, you can have goals, but they are just guesses. They are directional things. They're things that sort of give you an idea of where you might want to go. You don't have to be hard and fast. Now, you might have a goal of being debt-free or working part-time or some specific thing, but most people don't have concrete goals. They've got vague goals. They're vague, and it's okay to be vague. You can just guess. What you need is good habits. And good habits is what you do on a daily basis. And it's much more empowering to think about habits, financial habits, than it is to think about the inheritance bailout or winning the lottery. Do you know you've got more chance of dying by the time between buying a lottery ticket and the results being given than actually of winning? Just a sobering thought there. Thought I'd bring us down to earth. So here's the thing. Who's seen this film, The Bourne Identity? Is that not one of the best action trilogies ever made? Yes. Is it? Thank you. I knew I was on safe ground there. Jason Bourne. He didn't know who he was. He had about 9 identities. He was a CIA operative who had his memory wiped. Here's the thing. If you are using a bad identity or an identity that's out of date or is not true to who you really are because you've not thought about it, you can't develop good habits, because habits are formed in the concept of the identity of the person that you either believe you are or that you want to be. James Clear wrote a brilliant book called Atomic Habits. It's one of the best books on habits you can read. Really, really good book. And here's the thing. So you start with identity. You build processes, which we'll look at in a minute, habits. And then you get outcomes. Notice goals. So we've got to start here. You remember, go back to the whole thing about money beliefs. Who am I? What do I stand for? What's important to me? You are fine as you are, but just be clear who you are. And it becomes easy. You know when you get difficult things in life you've got to make decisions on? When you can go back to who you are, what we stand for, and this is the same with all good businesses, they're very clear what they stand for, their principles. So I have an image of who I am, and there are some things that I will not do because that is against my principles. So the idea of not eating well or not exercising or doing destructive behaviour doesn't compute with me because that's not part of my identity. So I cannot have habits, I can't allow habits to happen that would be against my identity. So the question for you is, have you or the people you love, have you really thought about what you stand for and who you are? So let's just look at some practical things that you can bore people at dinner parties with, right? Is that good? Okay. This is when we get serious. The CEO approach. I think you've got a new CEO, haven't you? Yes. Every company I go to, they've got a new CEO. I don't know what's happening there. It's not a very long tenure, is it? The CEO approach, right? Cut costs, earn more, optimize spending. You can see we've not spent much on these graphics to prove the point. The graphics department said, you can't use those graphics, Joe. I said, no, it's all part of the authenticity of the talk. So look, here's the thing. We've all got subscriptions to stuff we don't need or use or read. I had something for Building magazine. I built a house 3 years ago and I still got the magazines coming in about new windows and stuff. Why have I got that? Even I'm guilty. Earning more. You know, if you haven't got enough coming in, you've got to find a way of earning more. Here's a great question to if you're an employee. You speak to your manager and say, you don't just say, can I have more money? This is a great one. This is a great, I'm going to throw this in for free. What do I need to do to earn more money? Does that sound like a mind-blowing question? To your manager, what do I need to do to earn, whatever the figure, if you're £3,000 short, what do I need to do to earn £3,000 more and not leave? If all of your staff came and said that, you wouldn't need KPIs and staff development plans because you'd all be driving it yourself, wouldn't you? Okay? So here's another thing, how people think about their spending. Now your numbers will be different and what you spend your money on will be different. But we think we spend X amount of pounds. So we think we're in control of our money, right? But this is actually what happens. We've got to buy some clothes in the new year because, it's the new year, the sales are on. Got to pay for that holiday, haven't we? Doesn't go down in cost. Who's got pets here? Yeah? I have never been, it seems to be means tested, I have never come out of that vet less than £100. Whatever it is. Oh yeah, she needed this, she needed that. And my wife said, it's Inca. Right? If there's reincarnation, come back as a vet. Right? They've just been £220 for our 2 dogs. Car service, they seem to make it up as they go along. We had to refrigerate your car. What do you mean? The air conditioning. I said, what's that? Home repairs. Wife said, I've got the taps done, I've got the kitchen tap done and the shower and the girls' bathroom. I said, didn't think there was anything wrong with him. We never asked, she said. £400. Never to be seen again. Xmas. Now here's the thing about home repairs. I did a video on my own website, my personal website, talking about rent and buy. And this is really important for you to share this with young people. When you're thinking about renting versus buying, and particularly when prices are very, very high, you must make sure that when they're comparing the cost of renting a house versus buying, that they put a proper allowance for maintenance. It's the most under-budgeted for item for people when they're thinking about owning a property. Because when you rent a property, the landlord is meant to take care of all the maintenance. When you own a property, as we all know for our homeowners, it just never stops. Boilers, roofs, windows, etc. So the reality is when you add up all this, obviously going to come in, but we're not sure what it is and when it is, our true expenses in this scenario is £600 more. That's £7,200. Now, for you, it might be 50 quid, or it might be £1,000 more. If you don't allow for that, you're just in fantasy land. You're never going to get ahead because these things are going to keep throwing. This is what throws people off. Make sense? Now, I want to introduce the thing that turned me around when I was 26. Now, it wasn't called that then. I don't want you to worry about budgeting. Budgeting is for bores, for accountants, and for people who haven't got any friends. Sorry if you do budgeting, by the way. I'm sure you're lovely. The smart spending system. Who would not like a smart spending system? Does that sound appealing? Yeah? Because it doesn't sound boring, does it? Budgeting sounds like things, we haven't got any fun in our life. Here's the thing. This is what turned my life around. I devised the concept of this when I was 27. There are 3 yous. I know I said there were 2 before, forget that. There are basic you, there's the future you, and there's the fun you. Now, the basic you is for all your basic living costs, whether it's rent or buying a house, your groceries, etc. There's the future you, which is debt repayment, building savings, building investments, including your pension contribution. And fun you. Who likes to have fun? It's always, thank you, I'm pleased about that because it's normally the people at the back, but I'm pleased we've got some fun lovers in the front because I think we need more fun in our life. But here's the thing, we want to have fun without guilt, don't we? Without embarrassment, without feeling, oh, for God's sake, I can't come out today. We want to just be free to have fun, but we don't want that doer to wreck our future, do we? To make us feel bad about ourselves. So here's the thing, what you've got to do is you've got to decide before the beginning of the month where the money's going to go for the 3 U's. Now, your percentages will be different to you. If you're young and you're just starting out in a very expensive city, your basic you may be very high. If you're in between elderly parents and young children, etc., your future you may be very, very low. If you're very young again, or if you're not so young and you really like living, you could have a lot of fun. The problem is you've got to determine how much is okay to have fun. So what you do is this. You must have at least 2 bank accounts. Anyone here use any of the challenger banks with an app? Thank you. Well, here's the thing. As the money comes in, this is how I did it. I started off with 2 bank accounts. I now have 4. And before you worry that's complicated, with the new banks, that's not complex at all. Starling Bank allows you to segregate your bank account into up to 99 pots. Monzo can allow you to have multiple accounts. All of these new challenger banks can allow you to partition your money. So here's the point. The money comes in, and what you're doing is you're paying yourself first in terms of your basic living costs, and you're paying yourself, your future self, before you start the spending. But here's the point. Your money for fun, whether that's what I call regular fun or ad hoc fun, because you can have ad hoc fun as well, it's all right, is put into another account. So every month I have my fun pot, I have my Monzo app, and I buy the coffees, and I go out for a drink, or I want to buy a pair of shoes. Anything that's fun, anything that's not normal spending. And I'm spending down from zero, from the balance down to zero. And what I'm doing, I'm making it easy for myself to stay within some sort of confines. You with me? Now here's the thing. Do I overspend sometimes? Do I need to spend more? Do I need to have more fun? Yes. Some months I do have a lot of fun. But here's the thing. I have to make a conscious decision to move money from my outside savings account to top up the fun pot. I can see it in front of me. Could anyone see the idea, and that is available on the Learn website, which I'll show you in a minute. If you could share that with a young person, if you knew that concept when you were in your early 20s, would that have been helpful? Yeah? It's simple, isn't it? And smart spending. So what are you going to be telling everyone this weekend? Are you a smart spender? Right. Well done. My job is done. No. And here's the thing. If you still haven't got enough money coming in and you can't earn any more money at Aviva, you need to do a side hustle. I do not run a removals business. That is my wife in Malta. She sent me a picture. She said she was with her mum on holiday for 4 days, and she said, "Can you please leave me alone? At least for 3 days." But the point is, you might have to do something on the side. You know, you might have to rent out a room or sell some clutter. Who's decluttered their house? Yeah? Any room, any drawers. I started with a drawer, and then that was enough. Oh, terrible. Okay. But a lot of people say, well, it's all right for you, Jason, you know, if you don't earn enough money, there's no way that you can possibly build wealth if you're just on the, you know, earning a modest amount. And I would say, well, I disagree. Because there's a great story of a guy called Ronald Reed. He was born in Virginia in North America in 1921. He enlisted in the Second World War. When he came back from the war, he got a job as a petrol filling attendant. Now, I don't know about you down here in Bristol, but I come from Suffolk, East Anglia. Petrol pump attendants, we don't have any. But when they're around, I know that they weren't high-paying jobs. Is that fair to say? He did that job for 35 years, okay? And he decided after 35 years he wanted to go up in the world. So he became a maintenance man at the local department store. And he did that for 10 years. He got married when he was 48, never had any children, but she had a couple of kids, so that was a similar sort of thing, ready-made family. She died before him. But what no one could understand, he drove an old sort of pickup truck and, you know, he was just a normal sort of guy. And he died in 2014, aged 92. Oh, that was his house, by the way. Very simple, nothing too palatial, is it? It's a bit like Warren Buffett's. But he died in 2014, left £8 million. So $8 million, aged 92. And he did it because he had time. He lived a modest lifestyle. They say frugal. I don't like that word. And he invested his money long term. And he let the money, once he built a certain amount of money, it starts working for you. It gets a point when your money, if you build enough of it, the returns are always bigger than the money you can add to it each year, even if you're still working. So it can be done, can't it? Now, there are aspects of his life that I would not want to, you know, he used to use safety pins to hold up old trousers and used to go down bins and stuff. But I mean, that's a subsidiary part of it. We won't take that away, the gloss of the article. And here's the thing I want to just allay your thing. We're looking for progress, not perfection. If you are new to exercise, or you're trying to change your diet, or you're trying to change any habit, it's about progress. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to veer off. I had a bit of a spending blurge last month. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. I've just got to come back onto the straight and narrow. It's okay. So you're looking for progress, not perfection. And the power of tiny gains. Anyone know Sky, Team Sky? You know, the bike thing? In 2003, they'd never won anything in 100 years. And Guy Beresford came in as their head coach, and he looked at everything, the nutrition, the bike setup, every single thing mattered. And incrementally, that made the difference. And of course, I've had to change the presentation since the drugs thing came out, because they took it a little bit too far, the marginal gains. But nevertheless, everything matters. What you do each day, I'm not saying don't have a coffee, but everything you can do each day combines to say who you are and the outcomes you're going to have. So, Cato was an ancient Stoic, and he said, "What progress, you ask, have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself." Now, if you can develop really healthy and effective money beliefs, habits, and behaviours, then you won't just be a friend to yourself, but you'll be soulmates with your money. And that way, you'll get a great return on your life. And that ultimately is what it's all about. Now, before I finish, I know what you're probably thinking. What did I say to my daughter? So what did I say? Well, this is what I said. I looked at her and I said, Daisy, I have got some good news and some bad news. I said, the good news is your mother and I are not going to be a burden on you when we're older, because we've got enough money and stuff working for us that we can be taken care of. So you'll be okay. The bad news is don't expect any major inheritance bailouts anytime soon. She did look a bit dejected. I said, because you've already had loads of money spent on you. She goes, how'd you work that one out? I said, Mum and I have spent at least £175,000 on your upbringing. She said, how'd you work that out? Board, lodgings, holidays, hobbies, and education. It all adds up, you know. She said, Dad, you're being petty now. I said, if I was being petty, I'd have added at least £25,000 of lost interest. Count yourself lucky, right? Then she stood back and she said, Dad, you know, you funding my upbringing was one of your better moves. She said, because although you opened the door, I was the one that did the hard work and walked through it. And she was right, because the dinner we were having was to celebrate the fact she got 3 A's in her A-levels and was going to Durham to read classics, which is where she apparently is hard at work studying now, apparently. So, here's the point. We can open the door. I can help open the door. I can share these perspectives with you. The question is whether you're going to walk through it, and whether anyone you meet and people you speak to will walk through it, because it's all in your hands. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I'm not here to tell you what good is. I'm not here to tell you you haven't done great things. But I want you to be intentional and make sure that the role of money in your life is absolutely clear. You've been a fantastic audience. Thank you very much for your time. I'm hoping that's been useful. And if you did like it, please look at the resources page when it comes out, the Learn section. Share it with your friends and tell them to watch the video. Thank you for a great audience.